a young, radiant girl, and a man old enough to be her grandfather. At a wedding with no music, no smiles, only whispers and eyes wide with confusion. But no one knew what really happened on their wedding night. No one knew why she knelt beside his bed with tears running down her cheeks, whispering a name that wasn't hers. So before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Her name was Annika. She lived in the last house on the dustiest road in a village the world had forgotten. No parents, no photos, no birthday cakes, only memories of voices that no longer had faces. Since her mother died, she lived with her aunt, not the loving kind. Her aunt treated her like a broom with legs, useful, replaceable, and easy to ignore. Annika scrubbed, cooked, fetched, smiled when told, stayed silent when slapped. But none of that compared to what came next. One morning her aunt called her over. A man had come by the house, an old farmer from the edge of the village. Hard hands, quiet eyes, wrinkled skin. A widower, no children, no joy. But he had money, and her aunt needed it. "You'll marry him," the woman said, not as a suggestion, but like reading out a price tag. "He'll pay a good bride price, enough to buy medicine for Jonah." Jonah, Annika's little brother, half her size, twice her courage. Born too early, sick too often. The only soul who ever made her feel seen. She didn't answer right away. She just looked out the window, saw Jonah curled on the mat, coughing in his sleep. The next morning she said yes, not because she dreamed of love, but because she couldn't bear to bury another person she loved. The wedding was quiet, no dress, just a borrowed scarf and sandals that didn't fit. That night she sat on a wooden stool in the corner of the one-room hut he called home. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't even looked at her. Just laid down, turned to the wall and fell asleep like a man used to being alone. And maybe she was grateful. But it was the next night, when she brought him food and he asked if she'd eaten first, that something inside her paused. That was the first time he looked at her, not like a man looks at a woman, like a person looks at another person and actually sees them. She said nothing. He said nothing more. But from that moment on, she started to wonder who exactly she had married. They laughed when they saw her walking beside him. Not a soft laugh, not the kind you try to hide, the kind that bites, the kind that echoes in markets and follows you home. Look at that child marrying her grandfather. She must really hate herself. Maybe he promised her land, or goats, or both. The voices weren't whispers. They were sharp, thrown like stones. Annika didn't flinch. Her veil covered half her face but not her ears, and she heard every word. Beside her, Baba Elias said nothing, as always. He walked slowly, as if the earth owed him time. His cane tapped the ground like a clock with no rush. His clothes were clean but old. The same brown tunic, the same rubber shoes, the same silence. He didn't hold her hand. He didn't look at her. He just walked, like he was used to people turning away. They moved into his house 2 days after the wedding. If you could call it a house. A square of mud walls, a tin roof with holes that sang when it rained, one chair, one bed, and the smell of smoke that never left your skin. He gave her the bed. He took the mat. At dawn, he boiled water for her bath, then disappeared into the farm without a word. He didn't ask for food, or touch, or talk. Sometimes she caught him staring at the trees, just staring, as if the leaves had answers. She wondered what kind of man didn't speak to his wife, what kind of husband never asked questions. But then again, she wasn't really a wife. She was an agreement, an exchange, a bargain sealed in goatskin and guilt. And yet something about the silence began to haunt her. It wasn't cold. It wasn't cruel. It was peaceful, too peaceful. Like he knew something she didn't. Like he was waiting, but for what? The days passed like dry wind. The house had no clock, but Annika could count time by the shadows on the floor. Morning slid in through the cracked window. Evening slipped out through the roof. Nothing changed except the silence. Baba Elias still left before sunrise, still came back after dark, still said nothing more than, "Good morning, and eat, child." Sometimes not even that. Annika swept the compound 3 times a day. It didn't need sweeping, but the sound of the broom helped her pretend she had purpose. She cooked yam porridge with no spices. She lit the firewood slowly, just to make the moment last. Sometimes she sat outside with the chickens because they made noise, and sometimes she just stared at the sky and wished it would rain, just so something would happen. At night she slept alone, on a bed too wide for one. He slept near the door on a mat with a thin blanket. She'd hear him cough sometimes. Once she saw him praying, knees on the ground, hands on his chest, whispering something she couldn't hear. The silence didn't feel cold anymore. It felt heavy, not angry, just full of something she couldn't name. One evening she asked, "Why don't you talk to me?" He didn't look up from the sweet potatoes he was peeling. After a pause, he said, "Words are like salt. Too much spoils everything." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Just watched him slice, slow and steady, like a man who had cut his pain into tiny pieces for years. She started keeping a notebook. Just small things. A sentence here, a question there. Why do you always water the same tree twice? Why do you eat the skin of your oranges? Do you miss anyone? She never showed it to him, but writing made the days less gray. Until one day she wrote one question in big angry letters. "What am I doing here?" She stared at it for a long time, and for the first time since the wedding, she cried. It was the night of their third week together. No rain, no wind. Just the weight of the heat pressing against the tin roof, and the sound of crickets buzzing like nervous thoughts. Annika lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The bed felt colder than usual, emptier. Her fingers traced the edge of the pillow, over and over again. She thought of Jonah. Was he warm enough? Did Auntie feed him dinner? Had he taken his medicine? Her chest tightened. Across the room, Baba Elias shifted on his mat. She heard the slow creak of his joints. Then silence again. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Then just as she was about to close her eyes, he spoke. Not loud, not soft. Just enough. "Thank you," he said. She blinked. Her heart skipped. He had never said that before. Not once. She turned her head slightly but didn't reply. His voice came again, low and steady, like rain hitting dry earth. "Thank you for staying, for not running." Annika sat up. The moonlight touched half his face. His eyes were closed, his hands folded on his chest like a man at peace, or preparing to leave. She wanted to ask, "Why are you thanking me?" But no words came out. Instead, he added one more sentence. "You have a good soul. I see it, even if no one else does." That broke her, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a candle giving out in an empty room. She curled into herself, holding the blanket tighter, hiding her face from the moon. And in the stillness, she cried. Not because of sadness, but because, for the first time in her life, someone had seen her. The rain came without warning, not the soft kind that sings on rooftops. This one screamed. Thunder cracked like angry fists in the sky, and the wind ripped branches from trees like they were paper toys. Annika was inside, crouched by the cooking fire, shielding it with her body. The flames danced wildly, trying to survive. Baba Elia was still in the field. She'd seen him earlier, far beyond the cassava line, hunched over, digging something. When the first drop hit, she'd shouted, but the wind stole her voice. Now the whole yard was flooded. Water swirled around her ankles, cold and brown. Then came the scream. A woman's voice, sharp, from the house next door. Annika ran out, barefoot. At the compound across the road, the roof had collapsed on one side. Mud walls melting, children crying, a baby wailing like a siren. The mother stood outside, screaming for help, holding a toddler, soaked to the bone. No one moved. Neighbors peeked through shutters, but no doors opened. It was too fierce, too sudden. Then she saw him, Baba Elia, running. Not limping, not hunched, not dragging his feet like a man carrying his bones. He moved like water, fast, fluid, strong. He jumped the ditch like a boy half his age, tore off his wrapper, threw it around the children, lifted the biggest one onto his back. He didn't speak. He didn't wait. He moved like a man who had done this before, like it was muscle memory. He made 3 trips, pulled down a piece of roofing, found dry firewood from somewhere, got the baby warm. The whole time Annika stood frozen. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. She had never seen him like this. Not the quiet farmer, not the man who whispered thanks in the dark. This was someone else, someone trained, sharp, commanding. And when it was over, when the storm slowed and the wind gave up, he just stood there, soaked to the bone, mud on his arms, blood on his foot, and smiled. Then he turned back home. Didn't say a word, didn't explain. And Annika, she just stood in the rain, soaking, shivering. watching that old man walk like someone who'd stopped pretending. 3 days after the storm, a black SUV pulled into their village. It didn't belong. The paint was too clean. The tires didn't know dust. The engine purred instead of coughing like the usual trucks that passed through. And the driver? He wore a suit, a real one, pressed, tailored, blue like river stones. He stepped out, phone in hand, talking fast, pacing slow. People peeked. Some stared. One old man even crossed himself. The driver knocked on the wrong house first, then the next. Finally, he found theirs. Baba Elia was in the backyard, feeding the chickens. The man didn't wait. He stepped inside like he owned the place. Looked around, wrinkled his nose. The two men locked eyes and something changed. Baba Elia appeared at the doorway, still holding a basket of feed. Annika stood frozen by the hearth, hands covered in yam flour. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the man straightened his tie, cleared his throat. "Sir," he said. "Sir, not Baba, not old man. Sir." Not on Baba Elia's face, but in the air. Like the temperature dropped, like the house noticed. Annika's eyes narrowed. "I told you not to come here," Baba Elia said quietly. His voice had never sounded like that before. Not soft, not distant, sharp. The man lowered his voice. "We haven't heard from you in months. The board is nervous. The media—" "I left. That hasn't changed. But you will not come here again." Silence. Then reluctantly the man nodded. "Understood." He turned to go, then paused. "Are you really going to throw it all away? For this?" Baba Elia didn't reply. The man stepped outside, got in the SUV, drove off. Just like that. No answers, no explanations. But in that silence, something cracked. Annika dropped the bowl. She didn't pick it up, because now her questions had teeth, and they were hungry. That night, she didn't sleep. She waited. Sat on the edge of the bed, arms folded, feet cold on the floor. The lantern burned low. Baba Elia hadn't come inside yet. She could hear him, out in the backyard, chopping wood like it was his only language. Finally, the door creaked. He stepped in, face damp with sweat and moonlight. She didn't speak, neither did he. He walked past her, placed the axe by the door, wiped his hands on a cloth that used to be white, then turned to leave again. She stopped him with 3 words. "Who are you?" He froze, back still turned. She stood. "Tell me." Silence. Then, without facing her, he sat down on the floor, cross-legged, like a child about to confess. "I built things," he said. "Buildings, bridges, businesses, things people see in magazines but never believe were started by hands like mine." Annika didn't move. "I was once the man that suit was made for," he added. "The man they called when something had to be fixed or hidden." She swallowed. He turned slowly, met her eyes. "I left it all, walked away, because somewhere along the line, I forgot how to sleep without checking for knives behind my back." He chuckled bitterly. "They only loved me when I gave, when I signed, when I showed up in cars with tinted windows." Annika's arms dropped. "Why me?" she whispered. He smiled, tired but warm. "Because you didn't ask for anything." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. Not gold, not flashy, just solid, simple, heavy. "I kept this, not for show, but for the one who would sit beside me, even in a house with no roof." Her eyes burned. "I'm not that good," she said. He nodded. "Me neither." She fell to her knees, not out of guilt, not out of fear, but because everything she thought she knew about him, about herself, had shattered. And what stood in its place was something she didn't yet have words for. She wept, and for the first time, he held her. The next morning the sun rose soft, like it knew the world had changed. Annika moved differently, not lighter, not heavier, just clearer, like a mirror wiped clean. She cooked breakfast, simple porridge, sweetened with honey she traded 2 days ago. Baba Elia sat beside her, neither of them speaking. But this time the silence wasn't hiding, it was resting. And then, a knock. 3, fast, urgent. She opened the door. It was Dahlia, the neighbor's niece. Breathless, mud on her hem, fear in her voice. "They're here," she said. "Who?" Dahlia looked past her, at Baba Elia. "The ones from the city." He stood, no question, no hesitation. By the time they reached the square, a second black SUV had arrived. This one meaner, unmarked, windows too dark, tires too wide. Out stepped 2 men, Not like the first. These weren't messengers. They were warnings. One held a thick folder, the other, a cane. Not for walking, for emphasis. The man with the cane spoke first. You've made yourself hard to find. Baba Elia didn't blink. The man opened the folder, pulled out photos, documents, bank records, news clippings. You think disappearing fixes everything? The air thickened, children stopped playing, chickens stopped clucking. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Annika stepped forward, but Baba Elia raised his hand just slightly. I didn't disappear, he said. I chose silence. The man with the cane stepped closer. You owe people. I owe myself peace, Baba replied. Silence. Then the man did something strange. He smiled, but it wasn't kind. We'll see how long that peace lasts. He dropped the folder at Baba's feet, turned and walked away. The SUV rolled off, slow, deliberate, leaving behind a pile of paper and a past that had just kicked down the door. That night it rained again. But it wasn't the same rain. This one didn't scream. It whispered, software steady, like the sky finally let go of what it had been holding in. Baba Elia sat on the porch. Papers from the folders spread before him. They fluttered in the wind, but he didn't move to gather them. Behind him, Annika stepped out. She wrapped a shawl over his shoulders, sat down beside him. Their knees touched. No words, just the sound of rain. Finally, he said, They'll come back. I know. They want me to kneel. She looked at him. And will you? He shook his head. I've kneeled once in my life, and it wasn't for them. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, a coin. She frowned. This was the first thing I ever earned, he said. Not inherited, not bribed, earned. Cleaning floors in a building I would one day own. He placed it in her hand. I'm not afraid of losing wealth, but I won't let them steal my peace. Annika clutched the coin tight. They can't take what you gave freely. He smiled, and just like that, the weight lifted. They sat together, soaked in the hush of the rain, and the mess of papers at their feet didn't matter anymore, because the truth had finally come out. And it wasn't shameful, it was sacred. Now let me ask you something. What would you have done if you were her? Go ahead, rate this story from 1 to 10 in the comments. And if it touched something in you, maybe even just a little, then take a second to like this video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I do here. Because every like, every sub, every shared comment helps keep stories like this alive.